I've decided to start a new chapter without you, Gerald announced, tapping his crystal champagne flute with a silver spoon. His words cut through the wedding reception like a knife, silencing the room of 200 guests instantly. I sat frozen, watching my husband of 35 years smiling down at me from the head table. Behind him, our son Jason and his new bride Vanessa stared in shocked silence. To my right, Cynthia Preston, Gerald's executive assistant, attempted to hide a victorious smirk behind her napkin. My name is Eleanor Briggs, and at 60 years old, I never imagined my husband would choose our son's wedding reception to announce he was leaving me. The ballroom at the Grand Pavilion Hotel in Nashville suddenly felt airless, as if every molecule of oxygen had been sucked out by Gerald's words. My hands trembled slightly, but I refused to crumble. The weight of hundreds of eyes pressed upon me, family, friends, colleagues, all waiting for my reaction, for the inevitable breakdown. The silence stretched on for what felt like eternity, though it was probably only seconds. With steady hands, I raised my glass, meeting Gerald's eyes directly. "To new beginnings for us both," I said, my voice clear and unwavering. Then I took a careful sip of champagne. A few nervous laughs and whispers rippled through the crowd. Gerald's confident smile faltered slightly. He'd expected tears, screaming perhaps, or a humiliated retreat. My calmness clearly unsettled him. I rose from my chair with deliberate grace, smoothed the silver silk of my mother-of-the-groom dress, and walked over to Gerald's place setting. From my evening bag, I withdrew a sealed manila envelope and placed it beside his half-eaten slice of wedding cake. "You'll want to review this privately," I said quietly, for his ears only. "Though I suspect privacy will soon be in short supply for you." His eyebrows furrowed in confusion as I turned away. I made my way to Jason and Vanessa, kissed them both on the cheek, and whispered, "I'm sorry about this. I love you both. Please enjoy your evening. This changes nothing about how proud I am of you." With that, I walked out of the ballroom, head held high. Only when I reached the quiet sanctuary of the hotel elevator did I allow myself to exhale fully. Inside my purse, my phone vibrated. It was a text from my attorney confirming that everything was in motion. "It's done," the message read. "Board notification complete. Divorce petition filed tomorrow morning." As the elevator doors closed, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the polished brass. I looked different somehow, older perhaps, but also lighter, as if a burden I'd carried for years had finally been set down. I'd spent decades being Gerald Briggs's wife, the elegant, supportive partner who had transformed him from an ambitious middle manager into the CEO of Tarnwood & Vale, one of Tennessee's most prestigious investment firms. I had organized charity events, hosted dinner parties for clients, and cultivated the perfect image of corporate success, all while raising our 2 children and burying my own aspirations. In the beginning, we truly were partners. We'd met at university, he studying business while I pursued art history. We had dreams of building a life where both our careers would flourish. But one opportunity after another pulled us toward his path, and somewhere along the way, my dreams became footnotes to his success story. "Just until Jason starts school," Gerald would say. "Just until this promotion comes through. Just until we're more established." The temporary sacrifices became permanent, and I found myself transformed into the perfect corporate wife. A role I played with such conviction that I sometimes forgot it wasn't what I'd chosen. 6 months ago, I had gone to Gerald's office to surprise him with lunch on his birthday. His secretary looked flustered when I arrived. "He's in a meeting," she stammered. "Very important. Can't be disturbed." I should have recognized the signs. The late nights, the weekend emergency meetings, the sudden business trips to Bermuda and Lake Tahoe. But I trusted him, or perhaps I'd just grown comfortable with our arrangement. The truth found me anyway, in the form of a misplaced credit card statement showing duplicate hotel charges and jewelry purchases that had never made their way to my wrists or ears. Rather than confronting him immediately, I began paying attention. I noticed how Gerald's eyes lingered on Cynthia during company parties, how they arrived separately, but within minutes of each other to morning meetings, how his hand would brush against hers when they thought no one was looking. When I suggested therapy, Gerald dismissed the idea. "We're fine, Eleanor. We're just in different phases of life. You're overthinking things." 2 weeks before Jason's wedding, I found emails. Explicit messages between Gerald and Cynthia discussing their future together after he'd finally broken free from his marriage. They had planned a life together, and according to their timeline, he would tell me after Jason's wedding. Apparently, Gerald had decided to expedite things. What Gerald didn't know was that I'd discovered far more than just their affair. Working with my brother Robert, a forensic accountant, I had uncovered years of financial impropriety. Company funds diverted to personal expenses, hidden accounts, fabricated business trips that were actually romantic getaways with Cynthia. All meticulously documented in the envelope I'd left for him. He did what? My daughter Catherine's voice cracked over the phone. It was just past midnight, and I was in the hotel suite I'd booked separate from Gerald's. A decision that now seemed prescient rather than just practical for wedding preparations. Announced he was leaving me during the toast. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Oddly calm, almost clinical. "Mom, I'm coming over right now. Are you okay? Are you alone?" The panic in her voice made me realize how I must sound. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Really. Please don't leave Thomas and the babies. I'm not alone. Michelle is here with me." I glanced gratefully at my oldest friend who sat beside me on the sofa, pouring another glass of wine. Michelle had followed me out of the reception, suspecting something was wrong when I'd left. "Did you know? About Dad and..." "Her?" Catherine asked hesitantly. "Yes." I took a deep breath. "For about 3 months now." "And you didn't say anything?" "Mom, why?" The question hung in the air. Why hadn't I confronted him immediately? Why had I continued playing the role of devoted wife? The answer was complex, tied to decades of identity built around being Mrs. Gerald Briggs, of putting family peace above personal dignity, of maintaining appearances. But there was another reason, one that Catherine would soon understand. "I needed time to prepare," I said finally. "There were complications I needed to address first." Michelle squeezed my hand. She was one of the few people who knew exactly what I'd been doing these past months. The meetings with attorneys, the careful documentation, the strategic planning. "Dad texted me," Catherine continued. "He said you'd done something terrible, that you've destroyed his career and reputation out of spite. He sounded desperate, Mom." A bitter laugh escaped me. I imagine he would see it that way. "What did you do?" I sighed. "I exposed the truth, Catherine. Nothing more or less. Your father has been embezzling from the company for years to fund his lifestyle with Cynthia. The evidence was irrefutable, so I made sure it reached the right people." Silence filled the line, before Catherine whispered, "Oh, God. I'm sorry you're caught in this mess, darling. I truly wanted to spare you and Jason as much as possible. Don't apologize, Mom. You're not the one who should be sorry." Her voice hardened. "I just can't believe he would announce it like that, at Jason's wedding of all places. What a selfish, cruel thing to do." The sound of a baby crying came through the phone. "I have to go," Catherine said. "Henry's awake, but I'm coming to see you tomorrow, okay? No arguments." After we hung up, Michelle poured me another glass of wine. "To the liberation of Eleanor Briggs," she said, raising her glass. I clinked my glass against hers. "To reclaiming my life, and my name," I replied. The day after tomorrow, I would file paperwork to resume using my maiden name, Reynolds. Eleanor Reynolds. It felt both foreign and familiar, like rediscovering an old piece of myself long tucked away. The morning after the wedding brought unexpected clarity. I awoke to 32 missed calls, from Gerald, from friends, from Jason, and most surprisingly, from several board members at Tarnwood and Vale. My phone buzzed again as I was brushing my teeth. Gerald, for the 33rd time. I silenced the call and texted Jason instead. "I'm fine. So sorry about yesterday. Breakfast tomorrow?" His response came quickly. "Dad's freaking out. What was in that envelope?" "The truth," I replied simply. "Tell him to call his attorney instead of me." I had barely set my phone down when the hotel room phone rang. The front desk informed me that Gerald was in the lobby, demanding to come up. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," I told the clerk. "Please inform Mr. Briggs that any communication should go through our respective attorneys." Michelle emerged from the guest bedroom, looking sleep-rumpled but determined. "What's the plan for today?" I smiled, surprising myself with how genuine it felt. "First, breakfast. Then I'm meeting with my attorney at 11 a.m. to finalize the restraining order. After that, I'm viewing apartments." "Restraining order?" Michelle raised her eyebrows. "A precaution. Gerald has a temper, especially when cornered." I didn't elaborate on the times I'd hidden bruises under long sleeves after particularly heated arguments, another secret I'd kept to maintain our perfect facade. We were halfway through breakfast when my phone rang again. This time, it was Olivia Jenkins, the chairwoman of Tarnwood and Vale's board of directors. "Eleanor, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "The board has called an emergency meeting for this afternoon. The allegations against Gerald are, well, frankly, they're explosive. We're bringing in outside auditors, but what we've seen already is deeply concerning." "I understand," I replied. "Thank you for the update." "There's something else," Olivia continued, her voice softening. "I owe you an apology. There were rumors about Gerald and Cynthia Preston that reached board level. We should have investigated more thoroughly." A chill ran through me. "How long have these rumors been circulating?" "Almost a year," she admitted. "But Gerald assured us it was nothing, and we took him at his word. I'm truly sorry, Eleanor." A year. The timeline hit me like a physical blow. I thought back to the company Christmas party last December, how the conversation had awkwardly halted when I approached groups of executives, how wives I'd known for decades suddenly seemed unable to look me in the eye. They had all known, or at least suspected, while I remained oblivious. After the call ended, Michelle studied my face. "Are you okay?" "No," I admitted, "but I will be." Later that morning, as we prepared to leave for my attorney's office, my phone chimed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "You've made a terrible mistake. This isn't over. C. Cynthia." I showed the message to Michelle, who frowned. "You should show this to your attorney. It could be interpreted as a threat." I nodded, forwarding the message to my lawyer. As we stepped into the elevator, my phone rang again. This time it was Catherine. "Mom, I just saw Dad," she said, her voice shaking. "He's saying crazy things. That you planted false evidence, that you've been planning to ruin him for years. He says he's going to contest everything." "Of course he is," I replied calmly. "Let him try." "He said something else too," Catherine continued hesitantly. "About someone named Victor Salazar. He claims you've been working with him to set Dad up." "Who is that, Mom?" The name landed like a thunderbolt. Victor Salazar had been Gerald's business partner years ago, before Gerald orchestrated his ouster from the company. Victor had lost everything, his reputation, his home, nearly his family. He'd been trying to expose Gerald's fraudulent practices for years, but without proof, his accusations seemed like the bitter ramblings of a disgruntled ex-partner. "An old friend," I said carefully, "and perhaps the only person who knew Gerald better than I did. Victor Salazar sat across from me at a quiet cafe in East Nashville, far from the corporate high-rises and country clubs where Gerald might have connections. At 65, Victor looked older than his years, his once dark hair now completely silver, deep lines etched around his eyes. But those eyes still held the sharp intelligence I remembered from dinner parties 20 years ago. "I never thought you'd actually do it," he said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "I've been adding to this for 15 years. Every suspicious transaction, every shell company, every falsified expense report. When your brother contacted me, I almost didn't believe it. 3 months ago, when I'd first discovered Gerald's affair, my brother Robert had suggested contacting Victor. If anyone knows where the financial bodies are buried, it's Salazar, he'd said. The meeting had been arranged with extreme caution, through encrypted emails and burner phones, precautions that had seemed excessive until I understood the full extent of Gerald's activities. "The board called an emergency meeting today," I told Victor. "Olivia Jenkins said they're bringing in outside auditors." A grim smile crossed Victor's face. "Jenkins is thorough. They'll find everything: the diverted client funds, the phantom consulting fees, the offshore accounts. Gerald's been sloppy these past few years, especially with Cynthia. He thought he was untouchable." "And the evidence I submitted? Is it enough?" Victor nodded. "More than enough for civil charges. Criminal prosecution depends on how the board wants to handle it. Some companies prefer to handle these matters quietly to avoid shareholder panic." I took a sip of my coffee, considering this. "What about you, Victor? After all this time, will you get any vindication?" "Watching Gerald fall is vindication enough." He leaned forward. "But you should know, Gerald's already trying to discredit you. He's telling people you fabricated evidence, that you and I conspired against him out of revenge." "Let him try," I said with more confidence than I felt. "The numbers don't lie." As if summoned by our conversation, my phone lit up with a text from my attorney. "Gerald's lawyer requesting emergency meeting. Claims evidence was obtained illegally. Wants to negotiate before board concludes investigation." I showed Victor the message. He shook his head. Classic Gerald, trying to cut a deal before the full extent of his actions comes to light. "Should I meet with them?" "Absolutely not. Let the investigation run its course." Victor hesitated, then added, "There's something else you should know. The photos in that envelope, of Gerald and Cynthia at the beach house in Hilton Head. I wasn't the one who took them." I frowned. "What do you mean? My brother said you'd arranged for a private investigator." "I did," Victor confirmed. "But by the time my guy arrived, someone else was already photographing them. Whoever it was, they were very professional, very discreet. I assumed your brother had hired another investigator as backup." A chill ran down my spine. If Robert hadn't hired another investigator, and Victor hadn't, who had taken those photographs? Before I could process this new information, my phone rang. It was Jason. "Mom," he said, his voice tight with tension. "Dad just showed up at our hotel. He's demanding to talk to you. Says he knows you and Victor Salazar are trying to frame him." There was a pause. "Is that true? Are you working with Salazar?" "Jason, it's complicated." "Is it true?" he insisted. "Yes," I admitted. "Victor has been helping me gather evidence." "God, Mom. Dad's saying you two planned this for years, that you've been involved. Please tell me that's not true." The accusation stung, even as I recognized it as a desperate attempt by Gerald to shift blame. "Of course it's not true. I only contacted Victor after I discovered your father's affair." "So you've had this planned since before the wedding?" The hurt in Jason's voice was palpable. "You let me go through with it knowing you were about to destroy our family?" I closed my eyes, the weight of his judgment pressing down on me. "I never meant for any of this to happen at your wedding. That was your father's choice, not mine." The board meeting lasted 6 hours. I wasn't present, of course, but Olivia Jenkins called me afterward, her voice heavy with a mixture of anger and regret. "Gerald has been suspended pending further investigation," she informed me. "The preliminary audit confirmed most of the allegations. The board has voted to cooperate fully with authorities." "Thank you for letting me know," I said. "There's more," Olivia continued. "We've frozen several accounts, including the joint personal accounts you share with Gerald. I'm sorry, Eleanor, but it's standard procedure in cases like this." My heart sank. I had anticipated this possibility and had already moved some funds to a separate account, but most of our assets remained tied up in joint accounts and investments. "I understand," I replied, though the reality of my new financial situation was only beginning to sink in. "For what it's worth," Olivia added softly. "I've known Gerald for 20 years, and I never suspected this level of, well, betrayal doesn't seem adequate, both professionally and personally." After the call ended, I sat in my hotel room, staring at the wall. The past 48 hours felt surreal, as if I were watching someone else's life unravel. My lawyer had advised me to remain in Nashville until the initial legal proceedings were underway, but the hotel was becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Gerald had attempted to enter my room twice more, forcing management to post security in the hallway. A knock at the door startled me. "Mom? It's Catherine." I opened the door to find not only Catherine but Jason as well, both looking exhausted and conflicted. "We needed to see you," Catherine said, stepping inside, "to hear your side directly." Jason followed, his expression guarded. "Dad's saying some pretty wild things, about you and Victor Salazar conspiring for years, about you setting him up." I gestured for them to sit. "I imagine he is. Your father is desperate right now." "So it's not true," Jason pressed. "I only contacted Victor 3 months ago, after discovering your father's affair with Cynthia. Victor had evidence of financial misconduct that I didn't have access to. That's the extent of our conspiracy," I explained. Catherine leaned forward. "Why didn't you just confront Dad when you found out about the affair? Why go through all this?" "Investigation." I considered how to explain the complex calculations I'd made in those first shocking days after discovering the affair. How I'd realized that a simple divorce would leave me financially vulnerable. How Gerald would likely use his position and connections to control the narrative and minimize any settlement. "Because your father wouldn't have faced any real consequences," I said finally. "He would have divorced me, married Cynthia, kept his job and most of our assets. I would have been left with whatever he deigned to give me." I paused, meeting their eyes. After 35 years of supporting his career at the expense of my own, after raising his children and building his social network, I deserved better than to be discarded so easily. Jason rubbed his temples. "I get that, Mom, I do. But this, what you've done, it's going to destroy him. His career is over. He might face criminal charges. Those are the consequences of his actions, not mine," I replied firmly. "I didn't create fake evidence. I simply exposed what he was actually doing." Catherine reached for my hand. "The timing, though, during our wedding toast, that was cruel, Mom." "That was your father's decision, not mine," I reminded them. "My plan was to file for divorce quietly after you returned from your honeymoon. Gerald chose that moment to humiliate me publicly. I simply had my response ready." Jason sighed heavily. "This is such a mess. Vanessa and I haven't even opened our wedding gifts yet, and our parents are at war." "I'm truly sorry about that," I said, and meant it. "None of this is what I wanted for your wedding day." "Dad wants to meet with you," Catherine said suddenly, "to try and work things out privately before it goes any further." I shook my head. "There's nothing to work out. Everything is already in motion." "Please, Mom," Jason pleaded. "Just one meeting. For us." I looked at my children's troubled faces and felt my resolve weaken slightly. "One meeting," I conceded, but only with lawyers present. The conference room at my attorney's office felt sterile and tense. Gerald sat across the table, looking haggard. His usually impeccable appearance now rumpled, dark circles under his eyes. Beside him sat his lawyer, a sharp-featured man named Howard Blackwell, known for representing Nashville's elite in their most unsavory moments. "Thank you for agreeing to meet, Eleanor," Gerald began, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "I think we can resolve this situation without further damage to our family." "I'm listening," I replied coolly. Blackwell cleared his throat. "My client is prepared to offer a generous settlement, the house in Nashville, half of all legitimate assets, and spousal support. In exchange, Mrs. Briggs would agree to withdraw the evidence she submitted to Tarnwood and Vale's board and sign an NDA regarding both the alleged financial improprieties and the personal indiscretions." My attorney, Diana Winters, scoffed audibly. "My client doesn't control the board's investigation, which is already well underway. The evidence has been submitted and verified by independent auditors. You can't put that genie back in the bottle." Gerald leaned forward, desperation evident in his voice. "Eleanor, please. 35 years of marriage. Doesn't that count for something? This vendetta with Victor Salazar has gone too far." "This isn't about Victor," I said quietly. "This is about you stealing from your company to finance your affair, Gerald. About you lying to me for years. About you choosing to humiliate me at our son's wedding." "I made a mistake with the timing," he admitted, not meeting my eyes. "I was wrong to do it that way." "A mistake?" I repeated incredulously. "You brought your mistress to our son's wedding, seated her at the family table, and publicly announced you were leaving me. That wasn't a mistake, Gerald. That was cruelty." Gerald's face hardened. "And what you've done isn't cruel. You've destroyed my career, my reputation." "No," I interrupted firmly. "You destroyed those things yourself. I simply exposed the truth." Blackwell intervened. "Perhaps we should focus on the settlement terms." "There will be no settlement," Diana interjected. "My client will accept nothing less than what she's legally entitled to. Half of all marital assets, including those hidden in offshore accounts, and full financial disclosure going back 10 years. Gerald's face flushed with anger. "This is about revenge, plain and simple. You couldn't stand that I found happiness with someone else, so you colluded with my enemy to ruin me." I stood up, suddenly weary of the conversation. "We're done here." The fallout happened faster than I expected. 3 days after our meeting, Gerald was formally terminated from Tarnwood and Vale. The press release cited financial irregularities and breach of fiduciary duty, corporate speak that barely hinted at the extent of his misconduct. By the end of the week, the FBI had opened an investigation into possible wire fraud and tax evasion. Our joint accounts remained frozen, and Gerald had been forced to move out of our Nashville home after the court granted my petition for exclusive use. I had rented a small apartment in downtown Nashville. Nothing fancy, but it was mine alone, the first space I'd chosen entirely for myself in decades. Catherine helped me move in, bringing essentials from the house and adding small touches to make it feel like home. "Have you heard from Dad?" she asked as we unpacked kitchen items. "Not directly," I replied. "His lawyer called to say he's staying with friends since the court ordered him to vacate the house." Catherine nodded, arranging mugs on a shelf. "He called me again yesterday, still claiming you and Victor set him up." She hesitated. I told him I didn't want to hear it anymore, that he needs to take responsibility for his own actions. I squeezed her hand gratefully. "Thank you." "Jason's still struggling," she admitted. "He and Dad were always close. This has hit him hard." "I know," I said softly. "I never wanted to come between them." That evening, as Catherine left, I found myself alone in my new space, surrounded by boxes half unpacked. My phone pinged with a text from Michelle. "Dinner tomorrow? We should celebrate your new beginning." I smiled, typing back my acceptance. Then, almost on impulse, I opened my laptop and navigated to a travel website. After browsing for a few minutes, I made a decision and booked a ticket to Florence, Italy, departing in 3 weeks. I had always wanted to see the art I'd studied in my university days, before life took me in a different direction. On the kitchen counter lay the paperwork for legally reclaiming my maiden name. Tomorrow, I would file it. Eleanor Reynolds would be reborn, not as Gerald Briggs' wife, but as herself. The headlines in the Nashville business press were restrained but damning. Tarn Wood and Vale CEO ousted amid financial scandal. Federal investigation launched into investment firm irregularities. Gerald's fall from grace was complete, his carefully crafted image of success and integrity shattered beyond repair. As I navigated life after Gerald, I found myself rediscovering passions long set aside. I enrolled in an art history course at the local university, joined a book club, and began volunteering at the City Art Museum. Each step felt both terrifying and exhilarating, a reclamation of the self I'd nearly forgotten. Looking back, I realized that the envelope I placed beside Gerald's plate at Jason's wedding had contained more than just evidence of his misdeeds. It held my declaration of independence, my refusal to remain a silent partner in my own diminishment. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in decades it was truly mine to choose.